So today we're going to make this. Now, you look, you all said, and I would imagine 80% of you, roughly, said that you wanted an overlocker project. And I didn't want to make a top because, I don't know, that's a bit specific, isn't it? Specific. And to be perfectly honest, it's easy peasy, and if you think you can make it on a sewing machine, you can absolutely make it on an overlocker stroke serger. I know we've got some American ladies watching because we've got Maria and Diana on there. There might be a few more. We're on week 2, Diana. Oh, it's rubbish. Yeah, but you got snow. You got some interesting snow where you live. Diana's from Illinois, I think. Yes, so we're going to make this lovely cushion, and I thought, you know what, even if, and I did speak to you about this, getting that overlocker out of the box is a great start. Then you plug it in, that's another good start. And then of course you need to thread it. Now some machines come pre-threaded. The Crafter's Companion one, which sits back of my set here, is already threaded up when you get it. And it's got material, a little blue piece of material underneath it, and a lot of machines have this, where it's been tested in the factory, so you know jolly well it's perfectly fine because it's been tested. Some things, your threads may have jiggled around a bit in transit, that sort of thing, so you just need to make sure your threads are not tight, but nice and straight. I don't know, you won't be able to see them, they're a little bit, you can't see in the light, I don't think, but they need to be nice and straight, not curly whirly, just to sort of straighten them out. And all you need to do is pull the thread down here to make sure that it's nice and tight. Now I'm using my own personal overlocker, but to be perfectly honest, it doesn't matter what overlocker you've got, okay? They all do the same job. And also I've always said the main thing you're going to do with an overlocker is a 4-thread stitch, okay? So I always have to say it slowly. So that's mainly what you're going to use it for. Of course there are a gazillion other things you can do with it, and when you get, if you've got one, the instruction book will always tell you about tensions and changing dials and bits and bobs. Now I can't do that with you because I don't know what machine you've got, and unless we all sit here with a certain machine, it ain't going to work that way. So I thought, you know what, the best thing what I can do is to come up with a project that you can all get your teeth into, right? And a lot of this is getting used to how your overlocker works, how it sounds, how it reacts to you, how it reacts to fabric, and a couple of little tricks on the way, okay? So that's about it really. So we're going to make this cushion. It's got just like an envelope back to it, so I'll just turn it so you can see it. I don't know if you can see it there. Now I've done it so this is all overlocked here. I'll perhaps show you on the overhead in a sec, but it's not vital that you see that bit at the minute. And all of the seams have been overlocked, and they're actually kind of 3D, if you like. They're standing proud, which is lovely. Now one of my lovely gold ladies suggested, and she does this, I think it was Linda, where if these seams are going to be something that you're going to see, like on this cushion cover, you could actually use your regular machine, if you want, to actually top stitch these seams down. So if you've used different coloured threads, or maybe a metallic thread, something that's really pretty that you want to see, like I want to see these seams, that's the idea of it, is that you could actually flatten, give it a good steam or an iron, flatten them down and do a top stitch over the top to catch them down and flatten them. I quite like that idea. I wasn't going to do it this time because we'll just copy exactly what I've done here, but it's something to think about, okay? That's another thing you can add to your overlocking arsenal, if you like. 2 things to look at, one very 3D and tactile, but another one where you can stitch all the seams down and make them nice and flat. So the choice is yours, and why not do 2? I think they're absolutely gorgeous. So I've said to you, let's just make sure you can see that. I think I've got some idea what's going on. So I've said to you 3 fat quarters. Now I've actually made this one, and I know I've got enough to make another one. it's only the only other thing you need is backing fabric, which I've got here. So and we'll look at backing fabric, you know, when we get to it. So like I say, I think you can. I know you can easily do 2 cushions. I've cut some strips already, 2.5 inches, and that's, now let me think. That's not. So let me try to explain this. The selvage is still here intact, okay? And the reason for that is because this particular pattern is directional. So if I'd gone down the longer strip, the longer edge, if you like, of your fat quarter, the clouds would have been on the side, and I didn't like that idea. So I've done it so the clouds are going up the fabric, if you like. Now this is Liberty fabric. I was astounded that this was Liberty fabric, because it's just it's not how I know Liberty. And if any of you know Liberty, you think more of the sort of chintzy prints. Let me just see if I can. I've got a little purse here. Here we go. It's more sort of that sort of print, where it's very sort of chintzy and florally. I mean, I know this is probably 40 years old, this fabric, but that's my impression, if you like, of Liberty fabric. So it was quite interesting to get some Liberty fabric that was really very modern and trendy, and yes, different, very fresh. I love the blues and whites. So if we have a quick look on my desk here, you can see that I've got, this is my fat quarters. They're folded in half, and you can see that's the selvage there. And oh, hi Maureen from Ohio. How lovely. Is it posh in Ohio? I can't even say it. Ohio. I can't even say it, so it must be. So look, I folded this in half, and my selvages are all sitting nicely together. And obviously I've already pre-cut this, so I'm desperately trying to keep all those edges fairly even. So literally you want 3 lots of 2.5 inch cuts. Okay, so I've done 2, and then all we're going to do is line up. Now, if you've never used a ruler or a rotary cutter before, then it's a great addition to your stash. And the ideal thing is to actually get your ruler. See, this has got yellow lines on it, and I'm not sure if you can see. I can zoom in a little bit if you want to see it better. But it's got yellow lines on, and what you need to do is to get a yellow line across that fold, and make sure that your black line, in my case, the 2.5 inch line, is sitting right parallel, if you like, with the fabric underneath, and that way you'll get a perfect cut. Let's just zoom out a little bit so we can see the whole mat. So if I bring that in, and we'll do that cut. Now I'm going to make this from start to finish. There's an awful lot of machining, as you would understand there is, and it could well be noisy. Overlockers are noisy beasts. They are also divas. And I don't say that like, I'll need it in that ruler in a minute. I'll have to bring it back in. But they are divas, okay? They really, they're a bit like stroppy children, right? Or no, lovely children. They're a bit like lovely children that one minute, beautiful, going along, sailing along nicely. The next minute it's like, I don't want to play, I've had enough. You know, the scenario of the child on the floor of the supermarket, or wherever you happen to be, at home now, throwing a paddy. That's what an overlocker can be like. I warn you, because it doesn't matter what brand, what make, how much you paid for it. Sometimes overlockers will tell you who's boss. So sometimes you have to tell them. Just work with it. Right, so we're going to actually stitch wrong sides together. Okay, so don't forget that. It's wrong sides together. And when you start stitching, make sure that you've got some wrong sides together. So make sure that when you start stitching, and we'll keep checking it, is that every set that you now stitch are going to be stitched all in the same order, and that way we'll know where we are when we start putting the pattern together. So I'm going to start stitching. I've got my machine on 2 needles, 4 threads obviously, and just, I've not changed anything. It's on a fairly nice stitch, nice width wise if you like, and you can change that if you want to. If you don't want to use so much thread, you can widen the gap between your stitches. You'll get to know what you like to see, because overlocking is very visual, and we'll look at that in detail as we start to cut and put these together. So I'm going to make sure that I can get my foot in there. The other thing about overlockers, and you can just about see my machine fine, is that you can lift the front foot up. So if you wanted to, if you're not using the blade, you can lift this foot up at the front and slot your fabric right underneath. But we are using the blade, and the reason for that is because we want all of these edges to be beautifully neat. Okay, if you don't want to use the blade because you think you can line this up beautifully, you'll find that the edges of your fabric will be slightly curled and not as crisp. It's worth having a little test. There are times when you don't need to use the blade, but not today. So just keep them lined up, because obviously these are all accurate. And run off, always run off. You can use your cutter if you want to. They're not always very efficient because there's so many threads and loops and chains, it tends to shred the thread rather than cut it. So there's our first piece put together. So we're going to repeat that with the third piece, and again, don't forget, wrong sides together. It's kind of like the mantra when you're doing something like this. It goes against the grain a little bit actually, especially if you're a dressmaker. Oh dear, because that's the thing, isn't it, that you hear? Wrong side, right sides together, right sides together. So now you got to tell me if this is too loud, because my microphone's just here. I'm trying not to get too near to the machine. So, and I'll try to keep smiling. Now when you're stitching these together, you should have the minimum of waste. So although you might think the cutter's not necessary, it's actually neatening everything up beautifully, so it is necessary. Okay, so there's our first row, if you like. There we go. So we've got 3 pieces stitched together. Just checking, make sure it's all right side facing out. Now there is a right and a wrong, if you like, to overlocking, and on one side, the bottom, if you like, it's almost like a Y. I'll show you in a minute. The top is in my opinion, a much neater looking finish. So really you want to be consistent with how you put your pieces together, and also when you piece them to make those, bring those squares together. It's not, you know, nobody's going to die if you do it differently, but it's just nice to be consistent, because up close it'll always look a little odd if you haven't got all the stitches looking the same. So if we go on to the second group, so hopefully it's not too loud. Oh, not too loud at all, Diana, thank you, darling. It's not too loud, that's lovely. Right, I'll shut up about the loudness then, and we'll just stitch. Now, an overlocker is such an interesting machine. I absolutely wouldn't be without mine. People can sort of talk about having, there's machines out there that will, there's a foot that you can buy that will cut. There's machines out there that, and obviously even our Stitch Pro will have like an overlocking stitch, and that's fantastic if an overlocker is not in your budget. I totally get that. And years ago, when I made dresses for Harrods, Harvey Nicks, blah blah blah, all of those posh places, I did at that time, when we're going back well 30 years at least, I didn't have an overlocker. My goodness me, I'd have thought that I'd won the lottery if I'd have an overlocker. Wrong sides together. And so all the seams I did were French seams. They looked beautiful. They look beautiful, and the quality is superb with a French seam. But an overlocker is very, very versatile. I'll just do this seam. I love this fabric. It's so pretty and fresh. I do love it. I'm really excited to having this on my sofa. Because we're almost ready, aren't we, for a bit of spring. We really are. On the other hand, if you've got a garden, that's great, isn't it? Because you can go out and sit in the garden and enjoy the sunshine. Some of us may not have a garden, have a balcony or a terrace of some sort. Well, you know what? I'm sure you can catch a little bit of sunshine somewhere sitting on your balcony or terrace. And it just lifts your spirits, doesn't it? Right, wrong sides together. Wrong sides together. I keep wanting to use my left foot, but I'll use my right foot. And I'll show you the bits. And of course, if you're lucky enough to have a store that's near you that's not open, but delivering online, and you know them and you know what sort of stock they have and all that sort of thing, what a fabulous time to support them and to stock up. I did the other day. My local quilting shop delivered to me. It was right to my door. I love them. I love them so much. But we have to be restrained, don't we? Well, of course, I'm self-employed. No money. But I've got enough stash to keep me going. I've done about food. Well, we've got croissants. Oh dear. So, tell me about what you've been doing. I know some of you have been doing patchwork blocks. I've seen all sorts of projects. Well, certainly in my group, I've seen lots of projects. And I have to say, we've got a little file. Well, it's not little anymore, because we decided that we should have a little file on the Facebook page that was just for our March makes, so everything that we make in March, and we've got over 100 things in there that people have made. So how busy is that? Right, so that's my scrap. So if I show you on the overhead, that's my scrap. Okay, so some little bits cut off, but that's okay. Perfectly acceptable. And you can see it makes such a fluff, such a mess. So it's good if you've got a catch box on your overlocker. If not, you could make one to fit, I'm sure. So let's have a quick look. That's going to have to be filed on the floor. So let's have a quick look at the stitching on this before we go any further. So you can see the difference between, and I just have to lean over a little bit, so I do apologise. So let's just get some of my bits out of the way. So this is what I would consider to be the good side, all right, because I quite like how that looks. All right, so I will be pressing this so all of these seams go that way. Okay, if I was to press it this way, I want you to see the difference. It kind of looks like a Y, doesn't it? So that's what you're sort of aiming for, to look something like that. Now, in my opinion, this is not as pretty as this side. So now I'm really hoping you can see, because on my screen it doesn't look very clear, but hopefully you can see. Maria says that she'd love to see the fluff on my floor when I'm finished. Please, Maria, honestly, I don't want to put you off your tea. So there we are. So I'm going to press everything going that way, because I think that's the prettier side. Okay. Now you don't need to see the overhead for me to do this ironing, do you? So I'm just going to bring in my machine. I've got my mat, not the machine, my iron. This iron is good. If anybody's got this iron, I'm sorry about the pole, I'll move over this way a little bit. If anybody's got this iron, brilliant. It for me, it sometimes it doesn't do what I want it to do. It kind of leaks a little bit. But I need the steam. I need it to be, I need to make sure these seams are as pressed open as I can get them, okay? Only because if we don't, the blocks won't fit together, okay? Because this is obviously a certain size, and the width needs to be the same as the length when I go to cut. So that's one. Now I'm wondering if I pressed it to the right side, but I am sure I did. So all I do is I get hold of this outer seam here, and I just kind of pull it, hold the iron on this side, then pull it with my hand, and that is usually enough to sort of spread those seams out. And then I go from the other side and sort of push them out. And of course you can give this a steam if you want to, just to help it. But be careful. I mean, it's not on the bias, but you must be careful you don't stretch it too much and distort it. So that's two. Is this helping anybody at all? Are you feeling this is useful? I have to say, you just got to get your machine out of the box. You know I sound like a broken record, but you ain't going to learn about it if it's still stuck in the box. And do you know what? This has never been a better time. Not being funny. And I know it's horrid, and I'm not going to talk about it really, but this has never been a better time to get these things out and have a little play. Listen, you've got nowhere to go. Nowhere. Well, you're allowed out once a day. Big deal. It's a bit like having a walk around the prison yard, isn't it? Sorry. It's not funny. Anyway, there we are. Cut all my three. So let's just pop this to one side. I'm going to move this out of the way. So a quick mention about my Gold Club. If you haven't joined already, there's no time like the present. Just pop to my website, find the link that says Gold Members Sign Up here, and then you have access to my Facebook weekly events, which is absolutely amazing. My girls love it. And of course you get the free patterns as well. So if you want more information, there is actually a video on YouTube that you can have a little look at. I make no apologies for the state of my mat. It's a tool for purpose, fit for purpose. Right, let's get my ruler and rotary cutter in. So now these all need to be cut down to 6.5. So the best piece of advice I can give you is to use your mat. Now you may not be able to see, and if I zoom in, I'll tell you what, we'll go on the overhead. It's a bit boring, but we'll go on the overhead. Yes, so the best thing to do is to make sure, put it on the mat so it's lined up with one of the lines on the mat. And that way you know everything's parallel, because you can see this is not so straight, but we need it to be 6.5. But the first thing we need to do is straighten this edge off. I'm going to fight for a bit of space here. I could move it, but hey ho. And the other tip, really, it's not so easy excuse me, at the moment, but the yellow lines that I have on my ruler, it's always good to run them parallel against your seam as well. So if I was to bring this in, and I don't know how easy this is for you to see, but my yellow line runs here, but it also is running along the bottom of my stitch and my stitches, and not so much with that one, but certainly that one. And I could put it at the top of my fabric instead, and I know that is absolutely parallel. You know, it's all a good, nice straight angle there. So that's what you need to sort of achieve. The other thing you can do is use the sort of, if you've got grids on your mat, to use that as well. Now you really don't want to cut much off. I'm serious. If you cut too much off, you won't have enough to do the blocks with. Okay, so we're just going to move this along, and we want this to be 6.5 inches. So so this is obviously a 6-inch ruler. So what I'm going to do is put my 1/2 inch line. I'm going to zoom out so you can see a bit. So this is my 1/2 inch line on my. I haven't got any paper handy, otherwise I could. Let's see. I've got my instruction manual from a Juki. So there we are. So this line here is my 1/2 inch line. Okay. So let's just. And all I'm going to do is line that up with my inch line here. So it's absolutely on the money when it comes to being parallel. So that's what I suggest you do, and then you'll get your 6.5 inch square. So please don't be afraid. So we'll do this a few times. We've got to do it 9 times, so bear with. Again, try to keep everything parallel. Get that 1/2 inch line marked up. Make sure, check it top and bottom so you know that it's all lovely and square. Look, and you can see we haven't got much to play with at all. And fingers crossed. Let's hope that we've got enough. Phew. So you can see you're really tight, and this of course is using the warp of the fabric. That's how I cut the fat quarters, not the weft, which is what you'd probably want to do normally, because it's a little bit wider. But with mine, I needed the directional fabric to be, you can see how important that is. So again, let's just line this up and just neaten it up. That's tucked itself under there. That's it. And then just get that. In fact, we'll just do a little bit less, because you can see how little we're playing with. But it can be done. So why not? Why not? Why not? Just do it. Just do it. Be brave. So 1/2 inch line on the 1 inch line on your mat. And we'll just make little heaps. And then it's just a case of arranging the blocks, the pieces, the squares, whatever you want to call them, to a design that you're comfortable with. You might want them all to be going the same way, and just change the fabrics, so it looks a little bit different that way. It's entirely up to you, but we'll have a look at it and see what you think. I'll kind of cut them, and then we'll zoom out so you can see the whole mat, and we'll have a look at it that way. So I was just about to say, have you got anything planned? That's a bit of a stupid question, really, isn't it? But have you got anything planned? Now, some people are doing online, like fitness classes and stuff like that. I know Joe Wicks has got the kids going, hasn't he, in the morning? And isn't that absolutely fantastic? What a lovely chap he is to do that. Because you know what? He's doing it on his YouTube, and he might get a wee bit of income, and I'm talking a wee bit, from the advertisements that he has. But by golly, he's not getting paid to do that, is he? So how fantastic is that? And loads and loads of other people as well. So let's just zoom out so you can see the whole mat. I'll put my implements of torture away. And let's have a quick look. So I'm not going to look at the one that I did just before, the one you've seen. I'll just arrange these. It's going to be the same design, because I quite like how that looked. And so see how that looks there. But I like this stitching. I like how this stitching looks. So I am going to keep it. And I like it that they're both going that way. Do you see how the seams are both going that way? I mean, you could, if you wanted to, just to ring the changes, is to move those pieces around and have that stitching going up. 6 and 2 3s really, isn't it? But I'll keep it so that all of the stitching goes that way and these ones on the side go that way. And then when we come to do this one, now I want you to have a look at something here. Do you see how that's not quite the same width? Now that's because of the seam. When we go to stitch it, or when I go to stitch it, I will just pull that slightly and open those seams up, because it's only bad ironing, let's say, that's caused that not to be correct. And as I put it through the overlocker, I will stretch that to fit, which sounds a little bit, oh, that's a bit cack-handed, but it's not. It's because we've got those seams there, and because of the pressing, and I can open that seam right out. So you mustn't worry about that. So again, make sure that your seams are all going the same way, because what we're going to do is actually just move this to the side, and we've got to stitch all of these together now. So I'll try to do that fairly quickly, and then we can see how the block looks finished, which is always a good thing. So again, just line those all up and just make sure. So look, we'll just do the same. I think if I bring this in, oh, it's not, it's a little bit different, because the middle one is going like that, whereas the middle one's going like that. That's fine. There'll be a pair, but they'll be different. So what we need to do now is just to keep all of these in position, and I'll just move them over to my ironing mat. And then let's just get back to more of an interesting view, and we'll keep those all together. And I do always recommend that, because you can get lost. You can get lost which one goes with which. The only thing I would say to you is take a picture. So now we're going to stitch these blocks together, and don't forget it's still wrong sides together. And like I say, you need to manipulate your fabric to make sure it fits. So all I ever do is get hold of this bottom corner and bring it down and hold it. And don't forget that wrong sides together business. So there's one. So now we'll put the other one on. Now you might think this is a waste of thread. An overlocker can be really wasteful of thread. But threads for overlockers don't have to be top quality. Really, please don't use your best Gutermann on an overlocker. It's such a waste, and it won't last very long. So buy cheap and cheerful. Obviously you're going to test it out on your machine just to make sure, but generally speaking, an overlocker, it doesn't mind, it's not fussy. Well, you know it's a diva, I've told you, but it's not really fussy, not when it comes to thread. I would definitely make sure that you clean your machine out regularly. Get a brush, open up the door, get a brush in there. Don't use an air, you know, you can get aerosol cans of air, high pressured air. I'll get it right in a minute. Don't use that, because it pushes it pushes into the machine. So use a brush. Use your vacuum cleaner if you've got an attachment that you can get into the machine with. I'm going to use my left foot now. It's controversial. Again, stretch that corner down. It will go. It will go. And because overlockers are so dusty, full of fluff and bits of fabric and thread and just general fluff. So just make sure when you put these down, I know you can't see it, but just make sure that your seams are still going in the right direction. And again, wrong sides together. I know I keep saying that's boring, but I want you to come off here and remember what I've said. And I'll be sitting on your shoulder tweeting, wrong sides together. And that will keep you on track. Now you can undo overlocking stitches. It looks a little daunting, but you can undo them. And the way you undo them is to think about the two, maybe I'll show you on an overhead, but the two straight lines of stitching that are on the right side of your stitching is just like your regular machine stitching. So the thing to do is to grab the underneath thread, like the bobbin thread, but we haven't got a bobbin, but that type of thing, and you're just going to ease it and pull it through, and then the top will just come away, and then the two looper threads will just fall apart because there's nothing for them to grab onto. Or you can get your seam unripper and just rip the whole lot. But don't forget, you'll have already cut your seams, so when you restitch, just remember not to cut any more away, just to keep to the edges. So there's I'll show you on the overhead because it's a little bit easier and it's not quite on, you can't quite all see it all, but so those are all stitched together. So just like patchwork, we now need to stitch that one to that one, that one to that one. Now I also want you to consider that if this is the top one, the top row, then that stitch will look like this. So when you do this one, you want this to be on the top. So again, it looks the same. So all of these seams will be going in that direction. It makes more sense when I've pressed it and you can see it properly. So I'm just going to stitch these two together now. Just like patchwork, obviously you've got to be careful about your nesting. Not so much nesting, but again, try to get the seams that are meeting to look fairly neat. So again, I will just put the two seams together. Make sure that you've got it all going the correct way. I mean, to be honest, we should be pressing this. I'm going to do that only because well, let me just run this off. Only because I want it to be absolutely perfect. So let's just put this back. There we go. I know you can't see this, but I want the top stitch to be the one that I see. So I want to make sure that I press it in the right direction. So this one, I think you can see, maybe. Well, it's a little difficult, I know. But this one, I want it to flip. I'm just looking at my monitor to make sure you can see that. And I would steam that just to make sure it's going in the direction that you want it to go in. It just helps you because when you come to stitch them together, sometimes these things do wriggle. And just like patchwork, just, you know, it's no different. No different. Okay, it's not too bad. I could press that a little bit better, but when it's when I stitch it together, I'll stretch it. And this one as well. So what you need to do is when you get yours out of the box and you start stitching and start playing, have a look at the stitches and then you'll be able to see how different they look. So let's start again. So wrong sides together on those first two pieces and we'll stitch those together. Just make sure those seams are nesting. Please do not use pins anywhere near your blade. If you do, you'll need a new blade. Okay, it'll absolutely ruin it. So you'll not very often will you see me pinning anything. We'll pin when I do the when I put the back to the front. I'll pin then, but the pins will be well away from the seam. You'll see when I do it. It's quite important. Well, unless you want to go through a few blades. If you use clips, I think, you know, quilting clips, I think you're more likely to pull those out, aren't you? So we'll just line this up. With an overlocker, they do like to go a little bit faster than your regular machine. They just naturally want to go fast. Oh look, I haven't caught my seams. My seams are all gone a bit. That's going to annoy me. I'm going to unpick it. So I want you to see. Because I wasn't concentrating. Look, these are lying all beautifully. These are not. Okay. Now we can rectify this by unpicking, but it means me bringing my overlocker in from an angle, which I don't really want to do, but I'm going to have to. So we're going to undo this, and what I'll do is I'll undo this whole section along here. Now if you get your quick unpick on here, your seam ripper, whatever you want to call it, you should be able to just get in there and follow. But do be careful that you don't rip your fabric, because you know what seam rippers are like. So let me do this from the front, much more interesting. So just get your seam ripper in there. It's no bad thing that you've seen that. I don't mind, but I should have been more careful. So even though I steamed that deliberately to make sure that those seams were going all the right way, it still decided it didn't want to play, which is fine. That's my fault, not the machine or anything like that. So we'll just take all these bits out. So you can see how easy it is to unpick. I could have just left it, but that wouldn't have been very good for me. I would have not been happy. So don't forget, you've already cut this fabric, so you don't want to be cutting, you don't want to be cutting any more off, because obviously then your block size changes. And obviously coming into the machine, I can come in at an angle. Oh, I tell you what I could do, I could take the blade down and just come in without the blade. But make sure that you're stitching still from the same side. So don't think, because I'm at the end here, to start from the end, because you've seen the difference in the stitches. It will look mighty odd. So we need to still do it from the same end. So let's get my iron in and just bring those seams over. Oh, that one as well. That's a nuisance. Okay, I'm going to leave that one just because we haven't got time to mess about too much. So, yes, so don't forget to keep, if you started stitching from one particular side, stick with that. So I'm going to come in at an angle, and that's a normal way of, so for instance, if you're stitching around a hem, and like a hem of a trouser, for instance, and it's got to be stitched in the loop, especially using the blade, you have to come in at an angle, and you're coming in right at the edge of your fabric, and then you're coming in and then it starts to cut, and that's normal. Okay, so it's different from a sewing machine. So I'm going to lift my foot up, pop it under, make sure my seams are going the correct way this time. I think they are. And then just coming into an angle, and we can, and that's fine, that's fine. Stretch that out a bit. And to be honest, you will see a little bit of that because the fact that it's an overlocking stitch and it looks slightly different. And I'll show you what that looks like in a second. And there's one little seam that's twisted, but we'll ignore it. So the bottom line, we've got to stitch that now. So don't forget, we want that top stitch to be the same on the first row as we do the second. So wrong sides together. This time I'll be watching what I'm doing. And we'll stitch those this seam. So just make sure everything's lined up. Make sure your seams are nested. Give it a little stretch. Use that seam there that you pressed. Make sure that all of these are lying in the same way. At least you see how you get out of trouble, which is not bad. So again, we'll just make sure that's lined up. I always say when we give things away on TV, I always say don't judge me by my demo pieces, because you're always under pressure, aren't you? You always know you've got people watching. Right, so hopefully that's okay. So those are all the 9 blocks put together. So I need to give that a little press. So I'll bring in my mat, and then it's just a case of putting the back on. Now, I've been chatting and dribbling on about stuff, but when you come to do it, you'll be a lot quicker and you'll be able to whip these up in an hour. Trust me, you will. So one seam we need to put the other way, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. And so just stretch those seams out when you're ironing, and that way you're going to get a perfect square. There, not bad, not bad. And of course, as time goes on, these little seams will stand up and be, you know, they'll create a bit of shadow and things like that when it's on your sofa, and also it'll feel nice. So there we go. So now we need to do the actual back part. Now, I'm afraid I'm very haphazard with putting cushion backs on. I always do them probably 2 or 3 inches bigger than they need to be, especially with the overlocker, because I can cut the whole thing and make it super neat. So don't forget, with the cushion, we're also going to overlock this so it's a design feature, if you like. You don't have to do it like this. You can do it so it's overlocked and then goes inside and makes a neat edge, but I quite like the consistency of having the overlocking on the outside as well. So that's up to you. Any cushion that you have seen me make, well, not make, but perhaps have seen them on the telly as a sample prop, will have been put through the overlocker because it makes them really strong. So I'm going to do the overhead so you can see what I'm doing. Now, I've got a piece of white fabric here. I think it's right side facing out. It's very hard to see with this fabric with a pattern. I've just folded it in half, and I've made sure that it's just slightly wider, if you like. Like I said, I told you I'm really haphazard. It doesn't make any difference which way I do it. I'm really haphazard. I overlap them by about I don't know, 3 inches maybe. So I fold it in half. So all I'm going to do is just cut along my fold. Now, I don't want you to lose sight of the fact that we're using an overlocker. So if you're using a sewing machine, you're going to fold this over once and fold it over again and machine, okay? I'm just going to overlock these 2 edges here so they're super neat. And you can see that it's a lot bigger. I mean, it could probably have done with being wider, but that's the right side. Just got to make sure that I get my right sides. So that's my right side. So what we want to do, and I always have to think about this, is to have the right sides facing out, because I'm just going to overlock around the whole thing, okay? So there's one half, and I'm just going to check my flowers again. Make sure, yep, and there's the other half, okay? And you can see that it's a lot. You can see the overlap there, look. And like I say, I'm just going to overlock this. So I could come out a little bit, but you can see it's far too long, and I'm okay with that. Truly, I'm okay. So the next thing I'm going to do is to overlock down both of these edges. So if I bring in the one that I made, you can see that that is just an overlocked edge, which is perfectly acceptable. It's a neat and cut, beautiful edge, and the same with the one inside, okay? But do remember that stitch again, okay? So you're going to do it on the right side, so it's the top stitch showing. So I just have to keep checking. So we're just going to go the whole length. I'm not cutting anything, not much anyway. that's one. Now that's not on full speed, and it'll be the same for you guys. That's not full speed, and I only want you to go full speed when you're really super comfortable with your machine. And obviously, you know, always run that thread off, always. So we've done our overlocked edges. We could give them a little press. I'm not too fussed about this now. You know, I can press afterwards, that's what I mean to say. Not that I'm not fussed about it. So I want to be able to see my cushion front. I'm not really interested in the back. The main thing about the back is to get those two pieces lined up, pretty much how we had them before. So I'm overlapping, let's have a look here. I'm overlapping, oh gosh, let's measure it just in case you ask me. Gosh, what is it? That's 4 inches. We could do it 3 inches if you want. This is not an exact science, 3.5. Let's stick at 3.5. This is not an exact science, okay? You can, if you want, measure within an inch of your life to your, whatever block size you think you're going to end up with. But invariably, because we're hand stitching, or not hand stitching, we're stitching a mass of fabric here, best will in the world, that probably won't end up the size that you get, because, well, it's not bad because we've got the overlocking. But if you're stitching this on your machine, I'm just thinking your seam allowances will vary. You know what, it doesn't matter, does it? So all you've got to remember, this is your center strip here, so you want that center strip to be, now some people put their openings across the back, some people put their openings down the center. Now with this cushion it really doesn't matter a jot, because this is a cushion that could be any which way round, but you want this part to be in the center of your back overlap. Okay, now this is where we can't use quilting clips, but we can use pins. I don't like pins, but sometimes we have to. So you can see I'm pinning a good couple of inches away from the edge of my fabric. And I also want you to notice that I'm pinning where these two pieces are overlapping. I just want to make sure I've got that the right way around. Yep. Just keep checking. Yeah, so that's the, you know, when we were, oh, that's a dud pin. So you know when we were doing the seams, and I said to you, make sure your seams are all going in the correct direction, and you know, all that. So the same sort of thing applies here. So you just want to make sure that you've got enough room for your overlocker to go round, that's nowhere near your pins, and you want to strengthen, if you like, these areas here where those fabrics are overlapping, and they want to be stable. That's what I'm trying to say. So this is the fun bit, because you know what, we're practically done, and it's been an absolute joy. So again, you can't see maybe very well, but I've got my fabric overlapping there. I need to come out just a wee bit. Don't take any chances. If you think that's too near the edge, or, you know, here maybe you can see that, move it back, move it back. It's just not worth it. I mean, to be honest, you can obviously take your pins out as you go, obviously, but just err on the side of caution. So there's our top piece and our back panel, and they are all right sides out. Okay, so it's the opposite to what we've just been doing. If you're going to use your overlocker to put this cushion together and you want it to be a neat edge, then it's the other way around, obviously, right sides together. So this is right sides facing out, so wrong sides together. That is the same as what we've just done. So perhaps I need to go and have a lie down there. So we're just starting off the edge of our fabric. Hopefully you can see, yeah, it's not too bad. And we're just going along the fabric. So I'm using the blue fabric, my cushion, as my guide. So when we come down to the bottom, I'm going to take my pin out of this. So when we come down to the bottom, there's a little trick, because what we don't want to do is run off and have that long tail and loose threads. There's a bit of a trick. And now I know you won't be able to see this very well, but I'm going to explain what I'm doing. So I'm coming down to the edge, and like I said before, it's the blue fabric, it's my top fabric, which is the most important, not the white background, forget it. So what I'm doing is I'm going to come right down to the edge of my fabric. So my needles will stop right on the raw edge of my cushion front, okay? And I'm lifting my needles up, which they've done kindly for me. Make sure they're fully up, yeah. I'm going to lift my presser foot. I have a lever here. And I'm just going to wriggle that fabric a little bit. Just a little wriggle. And what that's done is that's taken there's two little fingers at the back of the foot of the machine, and it wraps the thread around when it's stitching. So what I've just done is I've pulled those threads off by giving it a wriggle, and that allows me to turn the corner, because obviously on this machine we can't needle down and pivot. It's 2 needles. You try it. It's not going to happen. So I'm wriggling my threads off. I've lifted my presser foot up to allow me to do that, and my needles are in the up position. Now that means I can turn my fabric. There's quite a lot of fabric here to turn, I must admit. I could have done with cutting some off. So then it's just a case of lowering the foot and then just coming around the corner, and your blade will cut all of that fabric away. So I might as well take that pin out. Just make sure that all those pieces are laying nicely, and it wasn't, little monkey. That's it. I think. Check it again. Keep your finger away from the blade, obviously. So we're going to do the same again, coming down to the edge, right to the raw, finding the wheel, right to the edge, that'll do. Lift your presser foot up and then just wriggle those threads. It's just a little tug, it's nothing heavy duty. Let me just cut that away. And then you're just turning like that. You put your foot down again and you're off again. Be careful when you come to these seams that are going in the opposite direction, because you want them ideally to stay flat. I'm just checking mine. Take that pin out. Catching a bit here. I should have pressed it better. So let's just cut a little bit of this away. So down to that edge again. You can always hand crank it. It's the same with a sewing machine, you can hand crank it. I keep thinking the lever's there. Twist, bring your presser foot up, twist that around, give it a wriggle. That releases those threads. I still keep thinking my lever's there. And then you can start again. Just make sure your overlaps stay flat. It's really important. You don't want to be undoing this. And then when you get to the point where you're coming up to the corner that you started with, like if you were dressmaking or anything that you're stitching, just make sure that your fabric is the same, that it fits nicely, is what I'm trying to say. Just run it off. Okay, so you can run it off. I'm just going to cut. What you could also do is to run it off quite a bit and then pick up some of the threads. Now, are the threads that you want to pick up are the threads that are from the straight stitching, not the looping threads, okay, that go around the edge of the fabric. It's the straight stitching. So pick up a couple of those threads and you can actually weave those back in. So that's another way of finishing off. So there we are. So there is our cushion actually made, which is fantastic, isn't it? And of course it's got the envelope back at the back. So let's just see what it looks like with the cushion pad. Now, because you've overlocked, the seams that you've created at the tops here, where this pressure now is with me taking this pad out, are super strong. And it'll last longer than if you've machined it. If you've machined it on your sewing machine, you can make this just the same. And you could use an overlock stitch, you could use a buttonhole stitch, or there's not a buttonhole stitch, blanket stitch, to do the same job. So we're pushing that in. And obviously you still want to be careful. You don't want to ruin anything that you've just created. And then ideally what you're going to do is you're going to give this a steam press with the cushion pad in. So all those crinkles that you made by turning this through will come out. So just snip those bits. Voila, one cushion. So we're done. Not bad. So now I've got to go and find another cushion case and put those on my sofa. I think they're really pretty. So I hope you've enjoyed that. I'm going to try and do another Facebook Live maybe next week. And so with the Facebook Live next week, I'm going to do some free motion embroidery. Talking of which, there's a free pattern. It's free on my website for this little sunglasses case, and it has got, and I'll just show you, it has got some free motion embroidery. Let's get the cushion out of the way. Let's have a look at it properly. It's got some free motion embroidery. I use gold thread, and that's on the pattern. So you could practice your free motion with this, and it's got the sunburst there, and that template, if you like, is on the pattern as well, and it's free. You just have to go to my website, find the product. There is a link somewhere down in my page, and you can download that for free. You have to, in the coupon box, you have to put free, F-R-E-E, all lowercase, and you could print that off. And I tell you what, that's what we'll make next week, shall we? And then you can follow along if you want to. But it's a really nice. I made this last year. I got a pair of jeans from a charity shop, and I made this last year. It's got some batik inside, my favourite, and I've used it every day. It's always in my bag because I love it. It's soft and cosy. I can't remember if I put warding in. Can't remember. Maybe I did, maybe I didn't. Can't remember. Doesn't feel like it, but anyway, doesn't matter. But it gives you an idea about free motion and what you can do and what your machine's capable of, and have a little practice and things like that. So I hope you have a good time making that cushion up. You've seen how it works. Maybe in the comments I'll put down again what you need fabric wise. 3 fat quarters, 3 strips. I've used the warp. So going down, following the selvage, that's where I've cut. But you could go that way if you haven't got directional fabric. But you need 6.5-inch blocks once you stitch 3 together. Stitch 3 together and it's 6.5-inch blocks, okay? And then stitch 9 together and you've got a cushion front. And like I say, I know we did this on an overlocker today, but you could easily do it on your sewing machine, no problem.